Today I want to tell a tale of lies, deceit, overpromising, underdelivering, narcissism, and most importantly, stealing millions of dollars from would-be consumers within the video game industry. I, of course, am talking about the Intellivision Amico. Now, I've talked about this system before on this channel back in 2018, 2019. I made a few videos about it. More recently on the secondary channel, which link in the description if you're not subscribed to that yet. I do go live there pretty often. I made a video talking about the Amico, but I felt like maybe I didn't do the system enough justice. Maybe I didn't do the whole situation enough justice in that video, and I wanted to bring it to a bit of a wider audience. I have no idea how long this video is going to be, but I have a lot of things to say about this. Now, this is more or less just my impressions of everything leading up to it, because I have been following this system. People think that I only focus on, certain systems and certain platforms. I follow a lot of video game news and a lot of video game drama because I find it funny. And I find the whole situation to just be really bizarre, but most importantly, I like to be well informed. And the Intellivision Amico isn't a system that necessarily felt like anything super different than what we had seen with other retro revivals from companies. Of course, you've had things like the Atari VCS, which I was very critical of. The system actually did come out somehow, some way, but when's the last time you heard about it? When's the last time you've heard anyone being excited for it? Like, yeah, it's a nice little device that it's kind of just like a mobile PC, but as far as an actual video game console is concerned, it hasn't done anything within the video game landscape. But even going further back, this channel was honestly started, people ask me all the time, what's the name? What does RGT mean? Is that your initials? And it's like, my name is Sean, so I don't see how that's my initials, but it's Retro Gaming Tube, because at the time, retro gaming was a very popular thing, and it was having this sort of resurgence back in 2015/2016 with consoles, things like the Retro VGS, which of course became the Talarico Chameleon. And honestly, I got kind of burned by that thing. I talked very highly about the Retro VGS because it was a product that I was interested in. I liked the whole fact of making, new old games and having a new system to play these new old games and the potential of the system, the potential future of the system. I was a bit naive to how a lot of these companies worked because of the fact that, up until that time, I'd focused primarily on bigger companies. I didn't really understand all these upstart companies. I just would take their word at face value. Of course, the Retro VGS/Talarico Chameleon ended up becoming just a horrible thing that never came to fruition. This, that, and the other. There's tons of videos on YouTube that delve into that history, and I suggest you check them out. But with that, I learned something from that whole experience. I learned that, hey, a lot of these people, they don't have good intentions. A lot of these people are not real people. They're trying to make money. They're just trying to scam people, and they're trying to overpromise and underdeliver, which I think is a perfect moniker for the Intellivision Amico. Now, like I said, I've talked about the Amico before on this channel, and honestly, some of it was pretty positive. Let me be real with you guys. Back in 2018, when the Intellivision Amico first was announced, and they first did this trailer for the system, I was on board with this. I thought it was an interesting enough idea for several different reasons. The main reasons being it was, budget priced, $150 to $170. Okay, that seems like a decent price for kind of a niche console. But I think the thing that really drew me in was the announcement of all these supposed retro IPs, games like R-Type, that were supposed to be coming to the Intellivision Amico as exclusive games that could only be played on the Amico because of licensing issues. And this was going to be like a home for new old games. And, at my core, at my heart, I'm still a retro gamer. That's why I have so many retro games surrounding me, because those are the games I grew up with. So initially, I thought this wasn't a bad idea. There were some interesting things, some potential red flags, like every game is going to be a good game. It's going to be curated, this, that, and the other, whatever. I was just taking the information at face value because that's all you can do with this. That's all you can do with something like this. We, of course, learned people that were involved in the Intellivision Amico, and it was kind of a who's who of gaming, I guess maybe royalty, you would say, or people who have succeeded in video games. People like Tommy Tallarico, people like David Perry, the vice president of marketing for Nintendo during the Wii era. So there was a lot of reason to believe Okay, maybe this will work out. They're not crowdfunding this or anything like that. It's going to be built on their own backs. And things like that kind of instill a bit more confidence in me, because when you look at crowdfunding for video game systems and video games themselves throughout the years, there's been a lot of people that have been burned by crowdfunding. I no longer crowdfund anything unless I know the person directly. If I know the person directly and I could send them a message on a platform and get a timely response, then I'll check it out. If it's a friend or something, okay, whatever, I'll throw you some money. But these companies, I've definitely grown more leery of them. I've definitely grown more cynical. Of course, then it was announced that Earthworm Jim was coming back, and Earthworm Jim 4 was going to be a game exclusive for the Intellivision Amico. And it's like, okay, you're starting to put your money where your mouth is. This is a big deal. You know, people today don't care about Earthworm Jim probably, but if you're my age, you know, if you're in your mid 30s to like mid 40s, you probably remember playing Earthworm Jim for your Sega Genesis, because that was the superior version of the game, and being like, this is a fun game. You know, the level design is creative, the character himself is funny. Earthworm Jim as a character was a big character. There was toy lines, there was cartoons and stuff like that, so I liked hearing that. You know, I was excited for it. But I think the Earthworm Jim situation was one of the first major red flags with the Amico, because they showed off this Earthworm Jim thing, and it was literally, it looked like a Flash game. Like, let's just be real here. The artistic style of the game, the fact that it was like 10 seconds long and just like this little small area, it didn't show any actual gameplay. That was one of the big red flags for me with the Amico. I was excited to see it, but it was like, I need to see more of this, and I need to see more of this soon. And then enter pretty much the end of my coverage for the Amico on this channel, because everything that happened after that, I feel was just, it was just the downfall of this system. The Intellivision Amico technically wasn't a crowd-funded thing, but it was an investor-funded thing. Over on Republic.co, which is a platform that does things like this, the Intellivision Amico, here it is. Oh, we raised nearly $12 million from 9,400 people. And it's not more so about, you know, pre-ordering your console or something like that. It's about giving money into this, a minimum investment of $1,000, maximum of $1 million. These are our goals, this, that, and the other. Oh, you get shares. You get shares in the company. Oh, we have over $25 million in purchase and pre-orders. Bullshit. No, you don't. You do not have any of that. And we'll talk about where some of this money came from in just a bit. Over 100,000 units pre-sold to fans and retailers. Where are they? You know, whatever happened with those things? Partnerships with MLB, Hot Wheels, Sesame Street, Care Bears, and more. And it's like, you just licensed these things. You got a license from Mattel. They're not working directly with you. You just got control of a license, extensive game library, including remade fan favorites, this, that, and the other. And it's like, well, why are we talking about money? I thought this was going to be something that we were just going to get a product. A product was going to become available to this, and you didn't need anyone's money. Enter in the rise of Tommy Tallarico. Now, I have talked to Tommy Tallarico before privately. Tommy Tallarico is an interesting individual. He's someone who's very passionate. He believes in his product. He believes in what he's doing. Okay, that's great. You know, you have to have confidence in what you're doing. You have to have confidence in what you're bringing to the marketplace. But Tommy decided to do probably one of the most interesting marketing schemes. And this is not including all of the delays that went with the Amico, because there were so many set dates set in stone, that never came to fruition. We'll talk about those in a minute. But Tommy Tallarico was pretty much, you know, I guess by default, the spokesperson for this, the person that was doing all the PR runs. And Atari Age was kind of his home, the Atari Age message forums, where he would have a thread there, and he would give updates within this thread. Tommy decided to do the interview circuit, an interview with YouTubers of varying sizes and stuff like that. Some people played his game, some people didn't. Tommy and I did have personal conversations. We had private conversations. He once sent me an Intellivision Amico shirt back in like 2018, 2019, something like that, because I was still interested in the product. But Tommy always wanted me to interview him, and at that time I just didn't see it as a fruitful thing, because what is there really to talk about? You know, he's doing these interviews, and these interviews almost feel like he's reading from a script, you know, using the same sort of, you know, puns and analyses from stream to stream. It was a very strange thing. And as time went on, the bigger channels stopped talking about the Amico because it was delayed. There was this, that, and the other. There was these red flags. The games, they started to show some of the games here, and they weren't games that anyone wanted. Cornhole, Shark, games that look like a college student learning game development created them over a weekend. Now there was, you know, games like Breakout. I thought the Breakout game looked okay, but most of these games looked horrible. They just looked horrible. They didn't look like system sellers. And when you have a brand new system coming to the market, you need something that's going to be a system seller. So once the big dogs stopped messing with Tommy went and started talking to smaller YouTube channels. And that's pretty much where this Intellivision Amico cult comes from. And I think I can understand why these people were so passionate. Some of them still are passionate about the Amico. I think I can understand why these channels, you know, dedicated themselves to the Amico and would defend it for its honor and stuff like that, because Tommy essentially took advantage of these people. And what do I mean by that? These were small channels. These were channels in the big sea of YouTube video games that didn't have an identity. They didn't have, you know, a clear course or anything like that. So Tommy would befriend these people. Tommy would become friends with these people and always show up in their streams and donate to them. And whenever they would make a video talking about the Amico, he would use them as pretty much free PR, thinking that the Amico itself was going to generate enough interest that people would be interested in it and these channels would potentially explode. They would do events for the Amico that were at literally these people's houses. Tommy would go to their houses and they would have meetups and things like that. The Intellivision Amico started to hit the PR tour, but there was one problem with this system, is whenever you would question anything, whenever you would question something, whether it was an innocent question or not, Tommy himself would take it very personally. Tommy himself would essentially fly off the hinges with stuff like this. He couldn't take the criticisms. He couldn't take the hard-hitting questions. He just wanted to sort of field these questions that, you know, from people that were excited about the product, not people who were, you know, actually wanting to get to the root of this system. And I think that was a huge problem, because his ego, his narcissism was pretty much the downfall of any sort of positive marketing for this system. He came up with terms like gaming racists because people weren't interested in the system or they didn't believe in the system or something like that. He dead ass said that. And it's like, why would you say that? Why would you say that? I am someone who hates when people calls everything an ist or an ism, because it actually devalues the words. It devalues the meaning of the words. And when something is an ist or someone is being an ism or something like that, we've devalued these words so much and just, you know, thrown them at people who don't deserve these tags that the words no longer have the meaning behind them. You know, you just want to group people together. So that was interesting. Gaming racists. And Tommy himself would just, if you questioned anything, if you tried to, you know, poke a hole in his logic, he would just turn it around on you. He would play the victim. And you can't do that. We're not talking about something small here. We're talking about something that you're wanting to put in GameStop. We're talking about you wanting to be in the same marketplace as Nintendo and Microsoft and Sony in the video game home console landscape. When you look at the Intellivision Amico, you know, it was a weird system because it's obviously based on nostalgia. It's obviously based on things like physical goods, but the system itself was not a physical good system. You could get these little cards that you would tap onto the system, ideally, that would play the games, but you didn't have the actual game like a cartridge. Like, you just pop in a cartridge on a system, and that was a big red flag for a lot of people. But, you know, if you questioned it, if you said anything negative about it, Tommy would just go on his thing. Of course, COVID came along, and COVID, I feel like essentially bought them some time, because with COVID, you know, a lot of companies were announcing delays on stuff like that. And then you have Tommy, who is just sort of hopping onto this bandwagon. Oh, there's a chip shortage. There's a chip shortage. We can't produce enough systems because there's a chip shortage, this, that, and the other. And it was just like, what chips are you using? I don't understand what chip you would be using in this system that's so technologically advanced that isn't already available on the marketplace. When you look at these games that are running on the system, they're flash games at best. They're, you know, an Android game from the early, you know, to mid, you know, I would say early, you can't even say early 2000s and 10s, because games like Dead Space came out on cell phones, and, you know, that had a robust 3D engine. So maybe like the mid 2000s these games were from. So Tommy would use that, and he would use that to sort of position himself and do the things like, oh, this is why it's delayed, but I promise it's coming here. You go to the Atari Age forums, you go to some of these interviews, he's literally promising games, and here's the thing. He's a wordsmith. And I don't think he's a bad guy. I know I'm kind of railing on him a bunch here, but I'm just having to be honest about this. If you would ask him, oh, well, is Contra coming to the system? Oh, we're talking to Konami. Oh, is Castlevania coming to the system? Oh, we're talking to Konami. We're talking to Konami. What about something like Sonic the Hedgehog? Oh, I love Sega. I've got lots of connections there. We'll just have to wait and see. You know, wouldn't that be something? That if you could ask him literally about any game, and he would lead you to believe that there was a chance of it being on these systems. There was a chance of it being on the Intellivision Amico. As COVID ravaged the video game industry, the Amico found itself buying more and more time, but consumers were getting very concerned by this. The people that invested millions of dollars into this system, the people that have pre-ordered their systems at various retailers, they started to ask more and more questions, because while COVID was a big deal and it did hurt a lot of industries, then you started to have other companies come along and not only announce products and not only showcase products, but produce products within the video game industry. Things like the Playdate, things like the Analog Pocket, things like the Evercade, which has gone through many iterations, whether it was the original Evercade handheld or the Evercade Versus, which was a home console. And now they're having a new Evercade handheld, the EXP, I believe it's called, that is coming out sometime this year. And it's like, well, all these other smaller companies are managing to produce products. Where are your products, Tommy? Where's your products? Well, Intellivision started to feel the heat from this. So they would do things like these events. And I alluded to the events beforehand, but they started to do them more and more frequently, and they would be very controlled events, and they would have interviews with people, and people would be like, oh, I love the Amico, it's the greatest freaking thing ever. And it's like, okay, well, these people don't look like necessarily hardcore video game players, but they're trying to go for a mobile market with this, which is stupid because everyone has a cell phone already. That's not a market you want to try to capture on a console. But it quickly came to be realized that these people were not just random people off the street. These were not random people off the street. Pretty much every single person that was in these events that would be interviewed in the videos that are still available on the Intellivision Amico page were people involved in the company in one way or another, or people that were friends of Tommy, or people that were investors in the company. And it's just like, you are under a microscope right now, because you've been overpromising and under-delivering. You haven't delivered anything to the marketplace. You are under such a huge microscope right now that everyone is watching your every move, and you thought you could get away with something like this. You thought that people wouldn't go out of their way to look into this information. And when they do look into this information, once again, it's just another lie. It's another lie. And it's like, I don't get it. I don't get how you didn't think you would get caught doing this. You're going to get caught eventually, okay? You're going to get caught eventually. And when you already have so many red flags with your product, when you have so many things that you've said before and then you've gone back on it, now the price of the system is $200. Oh, now we got to raise it a little bit more because of this, that, or the other. You keep going back on things, big things. You think people aren't going to look at the little things too? You think people aren't going to ask, where my product is that they've pre-ordered, where my product is that you promised would come out in 2020. You promised it would come out in 2021. By the way, it's 2022. We're nearing the end of 2022, and this damn thing still isn't out yet. We'll get to that in a minute. I'm already looking. This video is already way longer than I intended, but obviously I had a lot of things to say about this. And Tommy just couldn't take criticism. He couldn't take any hard-hitting questions. They showed up at E3 2021. Wow, what a disaster that was. What a disaster that was. They tried to position themselves as this family-friendly console like the Wii, which was successful, not necessarily because it was pick up and play, but because it had Nintendo IPs on it. Things like Wii Sports were completely different than anything else that were available on the marketplace. It did introduce an older crowd that did leave after the Wii, and Tommy wanted to recapture that crowd, but that crowd was there because that was different. That crowd moved on. Yes, they moved on. Where did all those people go? We're going to get them back on the Amico. No, you dumbass. They went to mobile devices. They went to pick up and play things because all of a sudden your cell phone can play a video game like Candy Crush. You don't need the console. And Tommy went out there with cornhole and stuff like that. It's like, bro, know your market. Know what you're doing here. Like, this is not the time or the place to do something like this. These people are not interested in that. These are the people you want to talk about R-Type with, which we never even saw. These are the people you want to talk about, you know, things like Earthworm Jim with that, you know, once again, we haven't seen really anything from it. Not Cornhole, not Shark, not Farkle. Like, I don't get it. And I guess that's a situation where, you know, Tommy himself, I don't imagine him surrounding himself with people that will question him. I think that, you know, it has to be yes men. It has to be people that will agree with everything. Then you have the fact that Intellivision was developing these offices in various parts of the country and various parts of the world. They had an office in India. They had an office in the UK. They had an office in California. And it's like, get a damn product out there. Get a product out there. People were making six figures working for Intellivision without producing anything, working in these offices, developing stuff. Developing what? Isn't the product already understood? Isn't the product already being designed? Isn't the product already being manufactured? Because there were times where Tommy would say, yes, it's in manufacturing, it's going to come out soon, but then all of a sudden, oh wait, there's a problem. We can't do it here. What are these people making six figures for? And you quickly start to realize that I don't think this ever was necessarily about the system. I think if they could release the system and have something that would be potentially interesting to people and get something out into the marketplace and maybe make some money, that was the best case scenario. I think the realistic scenario was get a payday for myself and my friends and, you know, people I like, and, you know, make some money, you know, use some grants because they got a ton of government grants as well, of course, you know, get some money from would-be investors who don't know any better. You know, it's essentially a scam, but hey, whatever, you know, we'll get money from them and we're covered because we don't have to do anything with Republic. It's, you know, you're using it at your own risk. And I hate to say that. I hate to not give those people the benefit of the doubt, but the more and more you start to look at the situation and the more you see how long the situation is dragged on and how many people were impacted by this in a negative manner, whether it's the people that were putting their trust in Tommy, whether it's the people that were pre-ordering these products, whether it was the people that were excited about the Amico and then they're in shambles because their YouTube channel is now completely gone and now they're not allowed to talk about the Amico because they look like the biggest idiot in the world, or they lost out on money on an investment, or they lost out on money with a pre-order. It starts to become more and more clear what this is. Tommy himself ended up stepping down as the focal point of Amico, and we got Phil Adams here. Let's take a look at the latest Amico update, and it shows you pretty much where this company is. This is coming to us on September 12th. Basically, oh, we're trying to get a pilot run to make sure there's no, you know, we did catch a problem. Oh, now it's going to take a little bit more time. We got a licensing deal, by the way. We're going to start licensing these games that are exclusive for the Amico, even though we said that they can only run on the Amico. Now we're going to license these games out. And I guess you'll still want to buy our system, even though you can play it on there. We've got connections with some of the IPs. Given that we'll have a limited number of Amico units initially, these partnerships will get the games into more hands who have been waiting to play while helping get the word out to a larger audience. If you honestly think that putting your games on another platform, these $2 games at best, and that's going to help sell your system, you've pretty much shown that this isn't happening. This isn't happening. You know, it's a tale of lies. It's a tale of deceit. It's a tale of narcissism. It's a tale of out of control egos. Tommy himself is now selling off very valuable possessions from his video game collection, a Super Famicom development kit that you weren't supposed to keep from back in the Super Nintendo days that he ended up keeping is now up for sale. There's other various items that are going up for sale, and it's just like, it's crazy. You know, some people made out like bandits. Some of these employees made their 6 figures for a year and then left, probably doing absolutely nothing. All the Intellivision Amico offices have been shut down. The game developers who've been working on games that were supposedly funded by Intellivision, they weren't funded by Intellivision. They were funded by the investors. They were funded by the people who were taken advantage of in this situation. They were funded by people who put their trust into a product and put their trust into an individual who had a track record throughout the video game industry, that was a name, that was somebody that they could, you know, put as the poster boy of this, but he couldn't handle it. He couldn't handle the criticism. He couldn't handle the questions. And that's why a lot of companies don't do what Tommy did. It's a shame. You know, will the Intellivision Amico ever come out? I don't think so. They might do a very, very limited run of these systems, but you know, it's been over 4 years now. We're getting onto the 5th year. We still don't have a working system that can play these games. And at some point in time, you have to call it quits. At some point in time, you have to admit defeat. You have to admit that you failed with this. And I don't think anyone's ego that is involved with this project will allow them to admit that they failed. I think they want to get a small number of systems out there so they can say, hey, you know what? We tried, but COVID this and chip shortage that. No accountability. No personal accountability with this project. It's always someone else's fault. And those are the types of people that these people are. You know, it's never their fault. They're perfect. They're holier than thou. You're the problem. You are the reason that this product failed. And no, you, Tommy Tallarico, you, everyone involved with the Intellivision Amico, are why this system failed. And I hope it was worth ruining your legacy, because I used to think you were a very talented individual. I still think you're talented. You know, Terminator's Sega CD soundtrack is phenomenal. And I don't even necessarily think you're a horrible person. You just have a horrible mindset when it comes to business. And you took advantage of these people, these small YouTubers. You befriended them. Why? For personal publicity, to stroke your own ego, to make you think that you had the best idea in the world. And whenever somebody would question that, whenever somebody would try to, you know, offer help and offer advice, you would shun them away. You would push them away. Now there's over $11 million that you've squandered. And these people are never going to get a product. You've besmirched the Intellivision name. The Amico will go down as a bigger failure than the Retro VGS, because at least that saga didn't take a lot of people's money. At least that saga was more concise. Took like 2 years. We're going on year 5 with your bullshit, and we still have nothing. That's the story of the lies, deceit, and the millions of dollars stolen for the Intellivision Amico. From my perspective, I'm sure that there's people out there that have a completely different perspective of it. You know, there's probably things I missed within this video, but we're almost at a half hour long, and I'm just tired of talking about this. So this is going to be my final say on this. This is me putting my foot down and giving my final word on it. So let me know what you think of this. Did you invest in this product? What was your perception of the Intellivision Amico from day one? Was it always going to be a failure? Or did you think that initial $150 system that would have a new art type, that would have a new, you know, all these retro IPs being revisited, Lode Runner was coming back too, like all these retro IPs that people were familiar with, that were going to have new iterations exclusively on the system? Did you think that was a good idea? Because, I mean, I sure as hell did. You're not going to light the world on fire, but you could do something like the Evercade did. And the Evercade's been very successful. Really, at the end of the day, the Evercade is what the Amico should have been. A cartridge-based system for retro gaming fans. Not something that you're going to sell millions and millions of, and you promise these people that you're going to sell millions and hundreds of millions of systems because you're going to be at retailers. No. That's not what you should have focused on. You put the cart before the horse. You tried to sprint before you could crawl. You wanted to jump to the front of the line without doing any of the real work, without doing any of putting the time and effort into things to make this a viable product, to make this a product that would exist and make sense in the current marketplace and actually potentially be successful. You wanted to go up against the big boys without even battling the small boys, without even going through and training and learning about what these other companies are doing. You thought you would just jump to the head of the line. Why? Why would you think that? I'm going to wrap this up. Hope you enjoyed my analysis of the Amico. Have a great day, folks. Catch you guys on the next video. Later.